Coming up, claims of a £2 billion VAT fraud, which critics say the taxman isn't doing enough to combat.
On DAB Digital Radio, digital TV, downloads and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
5 Live Investigates with Adrian Goldberg.
Now on 5 Live Investigates, the online bargains that could be costing us all a fortune. After the tax avoidance scandals affecting Google and Vodafone, claims the taxman is missing out on an even bigger bonanza by allowing overseas internet traders to dodge VAT. British sellers say they're being driven to the wall by unfair competition. And in an era when cash is tight, money which could be used to pay down the national debt or build schools and hospitals is going to waste. Let's get more now from Rob Cave. And Rob, at the heart of this are customers, people like you and me, increasingly looking for the best deal on websites like eBay and Amazon.
Yes, and clearly VAT or VAT adds 20% of the cost of any goods you buy. If you're buying from within the UK and the rest of the European Union, that's relatively straightforward. And in theory, most things you buy from outside the EU, with a few exceptions, should also have VAT added to it. And that's paid to HMRC, or Revenue and Customs. OK,
so that seems quite straightforward, but the point of the VAT being added on and paid to the taxman, that doesn't always happen.
No, because there are companies from China and elsewhere are finding ways around the legislation and are depriving HMRC of their cut. And at the same time undercutting rivals here in the UK.
So how do they do it?
Well, just think about what you want as a customer. You want a good price and you want quick delivery.
Yeah.
And in theory, that should give someone in this country an advantage over a trader in China because they can deliver it to you quicker. So what the Chinese companies are doing is stockpiling goods in the UK warehouses.
But hold on a minute, though. If these goods are stockpiled in UK warehouses, whether or not they originate in China, VAT still has to be charged on them, doesn't it?
Broadly, yes. There are exceptions. If a company sells something from outside the EU to a named individual and it's sold for less than £15, there's no VAT payable. It's classed the same as a small gift. And lots of goods are getting into this country on the basis that they fit into this category.
But we're not talking about items being sent to named individuals from a base in China or wherever, which might legitimately be free of VAT. From what you've said, we're talking about goods being brought into the country en masse before an order has even been placed, ready to be sent out from a UK warehouse.
Exactly. And so it's not, in this case, exempt from VAT. The rules say that if you're a foreign company shipping from a UK warehouse or fulfilment centre, as it's known, you're no different from a UK supplier and you should be paying VAT. You should be registered with a VAT number. And if you're an online shopper, you should be able to get an invoice.
But in many cases, that's not happening.
No, it's not. And I went to see Luke Spencer, who has a mobile accessory warehouse in Stockport near Manchester. He explained what it meant for his business.
We sell a range of products, Bluetooth speakers, mobile phone accessories, we've got screen protectors there, most of which we can import from China, or the Far East at least anyway.
And what's this one here? This is a
VR headsets. So it's a new fad that's coming in.
It's a successful business, but you were doing better in the past, weren't you? What happened?
We've seen a huge decrease in the sales we process per day. Prior to 2014, we were processing anywhere from 600, 700, 800 orders per day. Recently, we've seen that steadily decrease to around about 300 to 400 orders per day. And we could only really put that down to unfair competition. As a UK citizen, we're an easy target for HMRC. They can easily track us and trace us. For the overseas companies, they reside outside of the UK or the EU. It's a lot harder for the HMRC to track these people down and indeed get them to pay what they're due.
So, Rob, are there any estimates for how much the UK Exchequer is losing out in VAT? Because that trader obviously feels that he's been unfairly undercut.
Yeah, and more than him, it is absolutely huge. We've seen figures which suggest there could be as many as 1,000 of these companies based abroad, pretending to trade from abroad, but in reality sending goods from UK warehouses. They're making about 10 billion in sales annually.
10 billion quid. So I'm just doing a quick bit of maths here. 2 billion pounds of that is tax which is being evaded then every year. You've been doing a bit of shopping online as well yourself, haven't you?
Yeah, I have been. I bought myself a nice set of bike lights from a company
very
trading
nice.
as Super Trade Zone UK, and they're lovely.
Super Trade Zone UK. So the name suggests it comes from this country.
And it did. My lights did come from this country. I got them within a very impressive 2 days of placing the order. So they should have done. They were only coming from Cardiff to Salford.
And because it was coming from a warehouse in the UK, it should have had VAT charged on it.
Yes. So when I placed the order, I asked the company via eBay to send me a VAT receipt, but they didn't send me one. So I then tracked them down to Shenzhen to find out whether they had charged me VAT.
Shenzhen? That doesn't sound like South Wales to me.
And it's not. Super Trade Zone UK is just a trading name for a company called Betty Adel E-Commerce Limited. They're based in China.
In Shenzhen, no less.
In Shenzhen, China, even though the goods have been dispatched from Cardiff. Now, when I didn't get a VAT receipt, I contacted them and told them I was from the BBC and wanted to know why VAT hadn't been charged. They came back with a VAT number.
So maybe they just made a mistake.
Well, not quite, because the VAT number didn't exist. So I emailed back and asked them to check, and they came back with a very different number. This one was a genuine VAT number.
So they are paying VAT.
Well, that's still not clear to me. The VAT number belonged to an entirely different company, and the address they gave me was a mail forwarding service with an address in the middle of Manchester.
I'm trying to get my head around this, Rob. This isn't supposed to happen. Surely the VAT number must belong to the company doing the trading if it's being sent from the UK. So how did they explain that?
Well, they told me Super Trade Zone UK and Betty Adel E-Commerce were only trading names.
Yeah, but who had you brought the lights from? Had you bought them from someone in Manchester, someone in Cardiff, someone in China, and, most crucially of all, had any VAT been paid?
All good questions. That's exactly what I wanted to know. And I asked them myself, had I in fact bought my bike light from that company in Manchester, and could I contact them? But I got no further response.
Well, look, this is very confusing, isn't it? And customers shouldn't be confused in this way.
No, there's a European law which says if you're trading online and you're VAT registered, you should clearly state your VAT number to the customer. That didn't happen to me. I only got a VAT number when I pushed for one, and that number wasn't registered to the trader I thought I was doing business with.
Very curious. Well, after the break, we'll hear what the taxman has to say, and we welcome your comments as well. You can text us on 85058, email goldberg@bbc.co.uk. On Twitter, we're at BBC5Live. Good morning then. Welcome back to 5 Live Investigates. Today, claims of a multi-billion-pound VAT fraud. UK internet traders selling on sites like Amazon and eBay, saying that competitors from overseas are evading tax. We've heard that Chinese companies and others based outside the European Union are using warehouses here to process orders made online, on which they should be paying the 20% tax, but they aren't always doing that. Alistair emails to say, as far as I can see, HMRC is doing very little to stop the hundreds of overseas companies and thousands of individuals in this country that are deliberately avoiding paying taxes. And Peter on the text says, I've got an online trading company selling on Amazon. I reported 5 US-based companies for VAT fraud to HMRC. They have done nothing. Keep your comments coming. You can text us on 85058. Email goldberg@bbc.co.uk. On Twitter, we're at BBC5Live. Now, we heard earlier about Rob Cave, our reporter, buying some goods online, a mystery about the VAT being paid on that. We don't know how the goods we bought came into the country. But how could any goods which should attract VAT of 20% get into the UK under the radar of the taxman? Well, let's get a word now with tax campaigner Richard Allen. Richard's a spokesperson for Retailers Against VAT Abuse Schemes. Morning to you, Richard.
Morning.
How does it happen then?
Well, I mean, there's only 2 ways it could get into the country. They're either imported as freight, where VAT would be payable when they're imported, or they come in as mail order goods. And we know that goods are coming in as freight and being underdeclared the value. So, for instance, something that's worth £100 is being declared as 10% of its value or less.
So that's, an outright fraud, is it? As the freight comes in, a declaration is made to customers that this might be worth significantly less than in reality it actually is. And what, customs just aren't alert enough to pick up on the fact?
Well, I mean, it's just it comes through and then it's they take the value at face value. Obviously, they check some, but the volumes coming in are enormous. And the other way things come in is when they come in as mail order packages, as been described earlier, seemingly being sent to individuals when they are, in fact, all going to the same warehouse. And they just have a barcode on rather than an address, which they shouldn't actually be accepted as that. They should have a proper address on each packet if they're being sent to individuals.
Because in a sense, that's the giveaway. If they don't have a very specific address on them, that the indicator that they're going to be stockpiled in a warehouse and therefore should attract VAT when they're processed in the UK, even if the company that's ultimately selling them is based in China or the United States.
That's right. There's a system called low-value bulk imports, and clearly it's not being properly policed.
And we're talking about what Rob has described as something like a VAT fraud worth something like £2 billion a year. Do you think that's an accurate estimate?
I think it is. From what I've seen, one of the major retail platforms actually produces a data stream of sales, which you can pay to sign up to and see. And you can actually see these traders selling on a daily basis, what they're selling, how much it's worth. And if you see it being sold from a UK warehouse and they're not providing VAT information, it's clearly fraudulent.
Is there anything that the online marketplaces, Amazon and eBay, can or ought to be doing about this?
Well, I mean, this is the issue, is that the HMRC have got two options. They could pursue all of these traders individually, which would be an enormous task because you've got to find out, who they are, where it's coming in. And of course, a lot of them are in China anyway. So even if you found out what they were doing, there's no way of apprehending them. Or you could attack the way in which this stuff is being sold. And it's being offered on major retail platforms. And there is a concept called third-party liability in law, which is known to everybody with regards to stolen goods, for instance. If you handle stolen goods, you are party to the crime. Now, these platforms, they say that they don't have to police these rules and they make all of the people selling the goods aware of the VAT rules. But the question is if they make somebody aware of the VAT rules and that company continues to trade, they don't stop them from trading. They continue to handle those transactions and profit from those transactions. And I can't see how that is acceptable in any way.
OK, Richard, thank you. Rob, what do eBay and Amazon have to say then? Do they accept that perhaps they should be banning companies without a VAT number?
Well, Amazon told us marketplace sellers are independent businesses responsible for complying with their own VAT obligations. They say we do offer tools and information to assist sellers with their compliance, but we don't have the authority to review their tax affairs. Naturally, we cooperate with HMRC as we are required to by law. Now, eBay said it has always been committed to making its platform a fair place to buy and sell. It works with HMRC to ensure sellers comply with their legal obligations. But eBay also pointed out that while traders have a responsibility to display their VAT number, that wasn't mandatory in China.
And the European Commission not entirely satisfied that the UK is doing its best here.
Yes, the Commission doesn't think our tax people are doing enough to verify what comes into this country.
Which is one of Richard's key allegations.
That's exactly the point that he made. And it was exactly in terms of bulk consignments. It told us that bulk consignments of VAT-exempt individual goods which end up in a warehouse and are waiting to be sold to individual consumers are clearly an abuse of the system. The Commission actively encourages member states to use all the means at their disposal to stop this abuse.
Let's get a word with Chris Heaton-Harris. Chris is a Conservative MP who's used parliamentary privilege to name a large number of companies allegedly involved in fraud in this area. Chris, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So we've heard Amazon and eBay saying, look, they do what they can, but they've got no authority to review individual tax affairs.
I don't believe that's the case, actually. It's quite simple if you're a consumer, if you're really looking for this, to check whether whoever you've bought a package from, a good from on Amazon and eBay has got a VAT number, because you have to click through a couple of pages, but you can see it recorded there. And then you can check against a European Commission held list as to whether it's a proper VAT number. I don't expect consumers to do that, but I do expect Amazon and eBay to do that.
And you, in a parliamentary debate, named some of the companies that you believe are committing this fraud. So has anything happened since?
Well, in that debate, we did get the Minister concerned, David Gauke, said there were 75 live investigations by HMRC into these sorts of companies. And I actually had a brief conversation in passing with him in the week and asked him about what contact had been made, because I know there has been, he said, there were high-level discussions going on between the government, HMRC, and Amazon and eBay, and I wanted to check the status of this. And I've written to Amazon and eBay myself to say, can I come in? And so I can see what they're up to. But apart from that, I know of nothing.
I mean, this is mind-boggling in a way because, we all know that times are tight. We're in a period of austerity. If there is £2 billion worth and possibly much more of unclaimed tax in the system, and what's more, unclaimed tax, which is undercutting legitimate UK-based online retailers, you would expect HMRC to be going after it with as much vigour as they could muster.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I think HMRC have been missing in action on this one for quite some time, and unfortunately it's up to individual campaigners like Richard Allen, who you had on just previously, that's been making HMRC go that bit further. But I also, I don't quite get the logic for Amazon and eBay, because they actually just take a cut of the final sale. So I would say to them, they're missing out on a cut of an extra 2 billion quid's worth of sales if they were actually policing their sites properly. So I think everybody loses in this, and the people who lose the most are both the taxpayer here in the UK, because we're obviously having to make up that 2 billion gap with our taxes, and businesses here in the UK, which are being diminished because of unfair competition.
Chris, good to hear from you. Stay in touch. Chris Heaton-Harris there, Conservative MP, saying HMRC, Revenue and Customs, missing in action on this particular story. Now, neither HMRC nor the Treasury, which is the government department responsible for tax in this country, would talk to us live on the programme. But HMRC insisted it is acting against this kind of fraud. They said they'd seized £500,000 worth of merchandise in just 2 days in December 2015. More operations, they say, will follow, and they say they won't stand back and let UK-based retailers be undercut by those who don't play by the rules, and they say they will continue to seize goods from fraudsters who avoid paying VAT.